Hello, everyone, and welcome to the October edition of Lunchtime Learning with Entropia. Thank you for joining me, and as usual, we will go ahead and get started. Today should be a really interesting conversation, and I use it as a conversation because I don't have slides, and I do, however, have my notes to keep me on track. But we're talking about conflict today. I am Marquita Qualls of Entropia Consulting. If this is your first time joining in, and we talk about a lot of things on leadership and professional development. That's what these lunchtime learning webinars are supposed to be about. They're short, 30 minutes, so that you can jump in, jump off, still have time to have lunch if you choose to do lunch before or afterwards, or you can bring your lunch with you or have something to drink. Really want to help people to grow and develop in their professional realm, particularly as it relates to their leadership skills. And leadership doesn't always mean that you are leading a team or leading a group. Sometimes leadership just means leading yourself. And how do you prepare? How do you prepare to lead yourself in your career? You may always be an individual contributor in your company. You may be an entrepreneur. You may not necessarily have the title of manager and have a staff or a director or a vice president. But leadership and leadership skills are extremely important for everyone. Again, whether you're leading yourself, whether you're leading a team or a group, or whether you're leading an entire organization. These skills and the things that we talk about during our lunchtime learning webinar are applicable to everyone. So today, as we begin the last of our series for this year, October, November, December, the fourth quarter series, we're going to be talking about conflict. Conflict is something that all of us deal with. It's something that's inevitable and unavoidable. But how we deal with that conflict, particularly as it relates to dealing with difficult people, is a leadership skill that we all can use and utilize. It's something that I deal with on a daily basis, whether I'm dealing with clients or whether I'm dealing with people in organizations or committees that I'm on, or even organizations that I may be leading. Dealing with difficult people is something that we will always have to deal with. The question is, how do we do it? So before we get started and really dig into it, I just want to remind you, you can see at the bottom of the screen, if you have any questions or comments, I'd love for you to retweet or post those comments and I'll read them. I'll get back to you. You can also send me an email at mqualls@entropiaconsulting.com, or just visit my website, entropiaconsulting.com. I'd love to hear from you, would love to hear your feedback. If you're able to join in live, you can tweet now instantly, or if you happen to catch this on a rebroadcast, send an email or even tweet. I appreciate it. So conflict, dealing with difficult people. First of all, there are two things that we have to think about. The first is, what is conflict? Conflict, simply put, or for some people it may not be simple, but conflict is the mental struggle that we have that result from opposing needs or drives or wishes. They can be influenced by internal factors or external factors. But anytime that there's something that causes you to have that mental or emotional struggle, it's maybe something that goes against your morals or your beliefs, conflict is incited. Doesn't mean it has to be anything volatile. It doesn't mean that you have to act upon it. But even when you have those internal, like, ooh, gut feelings, something's not right, that's a conflict. Conflict really manifests itself when it's based upon your perceptions. And again, your perception is your reality. So when something doesn't align with how you perceive it to be or how you perceive that it is or want it to be, it causes conflict. That conflict then arises from differences, and differences that may be rooted in your perception on your interests. What do you like? What do you not like? It could be your style, whether it's your leadership style, it could be your communication style, it could be your style of dress, it could be your style of anything, your ethics and morals. It could even be your personality. So anytime something goes against what you believe or something that is not aligned with your beliefs or your perceptions of how things should be, that's when conflict arises. So you can imagine when you start thinking about people and dealing with difficult people, conflict would arise. Conflict does occur, but does it have to? And that's one of the things that we'll be talking about today. So you start thinking about conflict, differences in perceptions. The conflict is actually more than just a disagreement. It may be disagreeing with you internally, but it's not just a disagreement between two people. It's perceptions, it's your beliefs. What do I believe? What do you believe? What do they believe? When those things don't align, and if we've not communicated them enough to make sure that we are collaborating and understanding each other, conflict does arise, excuse me. So let's think about conflict in the context of difficult people. First of all, who are those difficult people and what does it mean? I'd like to present and say that difficult people are simply different people. We call someone difficult, excuse me. We refer to someone or label someone as difficult when they're different. They're difficult because they're different. And let's think about that. Let's go back to conflict. And when does conflict arise? It's because there's not an alignment in our perceptions or our beliefs. So if we are labeling someone or if we feel that someone is difficult, that means that they have different views or different ways of operating or different styles than we do. They may be hard to get along with. We may consider them difficult because they're hard to get along with, because they don't act the way we want them to act. They don't respond in a manner in which we want them to respond. We may feel as though they're dismissive. Their communication style may be dismissive. They may be too terse. They may be abrupt or abrasive. It's not the way that we want it to be. And so we label it as difficult because, again, it's different. Difficult doesn't have to be difficult, but it is, from our view, difficult is different. So how do you deal with those how do you deal with those differences? How do you deal with the difficult people? It's actually very simply stated, but probably harder to do in practice. One of the ways to deal with difficult people is not trying to change them, but it actually is realizing, how do I adapt my style? How can I change me? Because the thing about it is, you can't change them. They're only going to change when they want to change or when they feel there is a need to change. They may not see anything wrong with how they're doing it. And actually, most people don't know that they're being difficult because it's just how they are. But when we want to deal with difficult people and difficult situations, it means that we have to have a better understanding of who we are as individuals, what's our style, and understanding what are our values, what are our principles, what are our priorities. And then we can adjust to dealing with those people who are different than we are. Remember, the key to dealing with difficult, or as we label them as difficult people, is not trying to change them, but adapting our own styles to deal with them. If you know that someone is, as we would say, if they're very abrasive or very terse in their language, don't take it personal. You understand that that's how that person's communication style is, and you govern yourselves accordingly. That's not to say, however, that you cannot give them feedback that their particular style may come across or may alienate or may have people feel not included or put them off. Feedback is okay. And what they do with that feedback is up to them. You've done your part, but you can't change them, right? That's something that I really want to drive in and instill. When you're dealing with difficult people, the goal or the object is not to change them. It's to better adapt your style and understand how you deal with it. You can change you. That's the only person that you can change, is you and how you deal with the situation. Dealing with difficult people doesn't mean that you're changing who they are, but it does mean that you're holding them accountable for their actions. And that's really important is if you're a manager or team leader and you have team members that are difficult, and you have your other team members that are giving feedback on a particular person that they're very hard to work with or they're difficult. Again, you're not changing who they are, but you are holding them accountable for their behavior and their actions. And if their actions are causing, what do you say? If their actions are causing a disruption or causing your team to not perform properly or at their highest level, then yes, the feedback that you give them will have them to course correct. And they have choices to make. Either they will then adjust or they may need to find another place to work that better suits their style. But your team may not be it. The choice is theirs. You've given them the feedback. It's up to them to change. They can then deal with the consequences later, whether they do or don't change. But difficult is different. What makes someone difficult? Maybe that difficult person is you. Maybe I'm difficult. Maybe, you kind of have to look back at yourself. What makes a person difficult? And sometimes, as I said earlier, sometimes it's not even something that people are aware of, that their actions may be causing people to feel as though that they're difficult to work with or that they just have difficult personalities. When you think about it, you may have high achievers, people that are always high energy. From their perspective, they then expect other people to perform and deliver on the same level that they do. But for many people, they just don't operate in that same realm. But when you have someone who's very high energy, high achieving, and then they're working with someone who is perhaps not on that level or perhaps not motivated to function on that level, it does make it seem as though that they're the difficult person because you're uncomfortable. You don't feel comfortable working with that person. You don't feel as though that anything that you do will meet their standards. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that type of person? It's simple. Communication will solve a lot of the issues that we have. It's just simply a matter of saying, hey, I may not be able to deliver at this rate, but this is what I can do. Can we come to some type of compromise? Unless it's something that is extremely time sensitive and has a tight timeline or deadline for delivery, can we work where I'm contributing at my pace, you're contributing at your pace, and we come together for a great ending? Then communication has been open. The lines of communications have been open. You better understand each other. And that difficulty, or what you once perceived as difficult, really goes away because you have come to some type of compromise. You better understand that person better understands you. And it's no longer a perception or labeling of the behavior. It's more so really identifying the behavior and putting a solution for going forward. I want to go to the other end though, because we always think about difficult people as those people that are very demanding or those people that are obnoxious. Sometimes dealing with difficult people is at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Sometimes those difficult people to deal with are those very passive people, those very undecisive people, those quiet people, people who never speak up, people who never make a decision or never take a stance on one position or the other. They just kind of go with the flow. And that can be very difficult to work with and difficult people to work with in some environments and situations, because if you need someone to make a decision, you need someone to make a decision. And if you continually or constantly have to deal with that type of behavior, someone who doesn't want to make a decision, someone who is a people pleaser and wanting to make sure that this person is satisfied or this group is appeased, but never coming to a complete decision so that you can move forward, that also defines a difficult person. How do you deal with that one? Have any of you ever experienced that person who is passive, who doesn't want to make a decision? How easy is it to get things done in working with that type of individual? So you see, difficult doesn't always have to be the aggressive personality. Sometimes the difficult people that we work with and it causes conflict within us is on the other end. It's that passive person. It's the person who never speaks up. It's the person who never speaks up for themselves or for your team or for your group. So I can go to my notes here for a second. Lunchtime is kind of flying by. But so just want to kind of offer you a couple of things to think about when you're thinking about difficult people and conflict, and how do you deal with the conflict? Are you avoiding it? That's one of the techniques or styles of dealing with conflict, is avoiding. Not necessarily one that I would suggest when in terms of dealing with people. I think communication is one of the best, if not the best, ways and tools to use when dealing with difficult people, because you've got to bring it to their attention. Bring it to their attention of what is difficult. Again, you're focusing on the what. You're focusing on the what they're doing and how it's impacting, not necessarily who they are. That is extremely important to remember. When you're dealing with people, keep it fact-based. If you're dealing with someone who you have observed that they respond irrationally, or they may fly off the handle, they're extremely emotional, that's an observation that you've made about their behavior, in which you have labeled it as being difficult. But how you deal with it is, okay, peel back the skin of them being emotional or them being what you consider irrational. Step back, keep things fact-based. Everything is factual and fact-based. You don't want to add anything more. You don't want to take away anything. Just keep it fact-based. Present only the information that's critical. And that way you can eliminate some of those behaviors because you're focusing on the what and the how. If you want to give them feedback, you give them feedback on how their behavior impacts, and they can decide what they want to do. You're not changing them, you're giving them feedback on dealing with that behavior. Now, one thing I want to interject here is sometimes difficult people are different, but they also are very aggressive and bullying, and they do take advantage. Now, that's a very different case, a very different scenario than what we're talking about here in dealing with difficult people. If you feel that someone is abusive with their power, that's very different than just dealing with someone who is difficult and what we have defined in difficult with the behavior. When someone you feel as someone is abusing their power and being difficult to work with or bullying, in those instances, you definitely need to seek help. You need to let someone know, whether it's someone in your group, whether it's someone on your team, whether it's your HR representative. You let someone know about those behaviors and those types of behaviors that they're being displayed and how it's impacting you, because that's a more serious issue. I'm not saying that dealing with difficult people and the conflict is not serious, but when you have someone acting on that level, then it requires a different level of solution. So again, abuse of power, bullying, being super aggressive and demeaning, those are things that you definitely need to seek out additional help and let them know, and then you can walk through other solutions, other than just you trying to communicate one-on-one, because you don't want something to escalate and turn into a very challenging situation, or something that could escalate to much more than just the conversation or feedback or conflict. So dealing with difficult people, just kind of wrapping up here because this is a quick one, and I really want you to think more about how you are dealing and how will you change. What is it that you can do to change how you deal with the person who you have labeled as difficult? Why? Ask yourself this question. Why do you think that they are difficult? What is it that they do? What behaviors are they demonstrating that lead you to believe or label them as difficult? Once you figure out those things, then you can start to think within yourself, well, you know what? If I feel as though that they're passive aggressive, or if I feel as though they're passive, or even if you think that they are extremely aggressive or very opinionated, they're always talking over you and don't give you an opportunity to participate. There are things that you can do to deal with that person, but it starts with what? Communicating. It starts with giving that person feedback on what they are doing and how it makes them feel. Conflict. Conflict, dealing with difficult people, it usually arises and is rooted in just merely differences in your perceptions or your beliefs in how things are done. Um, Once you let go of trying to change that person or getting in your mindset, I know some of you probably came on here and you were looking and expecting me to give you a laundry list of how do I deal with this person? They need to do this. You need to tell them to do that. Tell them to do that. No, that's not it at all. When we're talking about conflict and dealing with difficult people, people who are different than us, the solution lies within us. We have to better understand who we are and how we want to change to deal with them. In some cases, it really could be as simple as just letting it go and walking away. If there are instances where you don't have to deal with that person that you feel is difficult, why do you feel that you have to deal with them? Why have you interjected yourself in that situation? If possible, simply back away and move on. You don't have to deal. You don't have to, as what's the old saying, you don't have to participate in every argument that you're invited to. If it's not something that's mission critical, if the person is not someone whom you have to deal with, know when to let it go and walk away. But that's hard for some of us because some of us feel as though we have to win. We have to be the person that comes out on top when we're dealing with difficult or different people. But it doesn't have to be that way. How we respond is definitely a reflection of our beliefs and our perceptions in that situation. So again, assess the situation, understand why you feel that person and what that person may be doing is difficult. What is their behavior? Then how you deal with it, identify the behavior, identify what can you do to better deal with that situation. Not changing them, but changing you, understanding what you can do. So it's pretty simple. I can tell you that from my own personal experience in dealing with people, it's very frustrating when you have to work in an environment with people who you have labeled or who you believe are difficult, because it seems like they just never will go away. It seems like everything that they do, they may be always trying to nitpick something that you're doing. They always want to challenge you on anything that you say. Nothing that you do is good enough. No work that you present is good enough. So it's just very difficult. You write a paper, they have more edits than your original your original writings. They have more edits. So how do you win? Step back and say, why do I let this get to me? Why does this bother me? And how can I better deal with that person? Because the other thing to think about is they are different, but you never really understand, or you may never know the driving force behind what's causing their behavior. And it really could be something that they're dealing with. Don't judge a book by its cover. Their response or how they are acting difficult could really be something that's not even related to you. It's not even related to the job. And many of us sometimes bring things into the workplace or into our committees or into our groups, and it's reflected. We project, not reflected. We project something that happened earlier onto other people, sometimes unbeknownst to us, but we do. But it doesn't have to be that way. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Look for the action. Look for the what is done and how it impacts rather than just the who, because we're all human. We all have our own little quirks and irks and quirks that may be difficult or may be annoying to someone else. So just as someone may be difficult to you, you may be difficult to someone else. And heck, you may even be difficult to yourself. You never know. You may be that person that's hindering yourself from moving forward because of something that you're doing. At any rate, thanks for joining in for our lunchtime learning, talking about conflict and dealing with difficult people. I hope that within the last 25 minutes or so that you at least gleaned a few nuggets that you'll be able to take with and apply to your life and your professional development and how you deal with conflict and dealing with difficult people or people who you have labeled as difficult. when in actuality, they're just different. Thanks for joining in. Look forward to hearing from you. Looking forward to connecting with you on next month, November, as we are wrapping up our lunchtime learning series for the year. Let me see what we're doing really quickly for next month. I actually kind of forgot what we're doing, but I can pull it up really quickly. Next month, we are talking about delegating to get the job done. Oh yeah, that's a good one. So it's the end of the year. You look back over the year and you think, oh my gosh, how can I do better next year? So much work to do. How can I get it done? We will talk about delegating to get the job done. Until then, have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and see you next month. Bye-bye.